President Trump speaks out about the election and what he calls maybe the most important speech he's ever delivered. Plus, how long could your wait be for the coronavirus vaccine? More on the CDC's distribution plans coming up. And later, President Trump promises to appeal any failed election lawsuit all the way to the Supreme Court. But even then, does he stand a chance? We'll ask our bipartisan panel to weigh in. Hello and welcome to News On. I'm Miranda. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin with the very latest lawsuit from President Donald Trump's legal team. Yesterday, the Trump campaign filed suit against the Wisconsin Elections Commission. It claims unlawful and unconstitutional acts by Wisconsin public officials. The president spoke about it in a speech in which he describes as maybe the most important speech he's ever made. Take a look.
Very rarely were legislatures involved, and constitutionally they had to be involved. But very, very rarely, and you'll see that as we continue to file our suits, it's constitutionally absolutely incorrect what took place, even from a legal standpoint. Many states, such as Nevada and California, sent millions of live ballots to every person on their voter rolls. Whether those individuals had requested ballots or not, whether they were dead or alive, they got ballots. Other states such as Minnesota, Michigan, and Wisconsin instituted universal absentee balloting right in the middle of an election year, sending absentee ballot request forms to all voters on all rolls. It didn't matter who they were.
Mixed reaction continues today following the president's 46-minute speech, including some election officials warning Trump's escalating attacks on voter fraud are putting their staff members at risk. Gabriel Sterling, top Republican election official in Georgia, blamed the president for, quote, inspiring people to commit potential acts of violence. Meanwhile, authorities in Arizona are investigating calls for violence against the family and staff of Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, while state officials in Vermont received multiple voicemails from an individual who urged violence against the staff there. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany weighing in, saying that the president condemns these acts of violence, adding, quote, we're seeing that happen to people on both sides of the argument, and there's no place for that ever anywhere. In other news, advocates and lawyers anticipate a flurry of clemency action from President Trump in the coming weeks that could test the limits of a possible presidential pardon, among many things. Trump is reportedly considering a slew of pardons and commutations before he leaves office. This includes members of his family, former aides, and himself. While it is not unusual for a president to sign controversial pardons on their way out, he has made it clear that he has no qualms about intervening in the case of friends and allies. And as Trump's legacy on courts continue to mount, the Senate Judiciary Committee will vote today on 3 more lower trial court nominees, including one to replace Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Democrats insist that Republicans are violating tradition by continuing to confirm judges towards the end of Trump's term. The committee is scheduled to vote on the nomination of Thomas L. Kirsch II to serve on the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. He's currently the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Indiana. If nominated, he will replace Justice Barrett. And the attempt to pass another coronavirus relief bill continues, except now House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer is calling for 2 more bills. So Democrats hope to pass the first one, again, before next month, and the second if Joe Biden officially wins and once he starts to take office. Now, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is also on board with passing a relief bill before January. He hopes to include it in a budget bill. He'd like to pass it before government funding expires. That happens on December 11th. Senator Mitch McConnell says that he's confident President Trump will, in fact, sign it. In coronavirus news, the U.S. reached a record in hospitalizations for the coronavirus, a whopping 100,000 to be exact as of today. That said, the CDC also just released its distribution plan for the upcoming vaccine. The plan right now is to administer the vaccine first to the most at-risk groups. And of course, that would include healthcare workers and residents in long-term care facilities. CDC Director Robert Redfield has not officially approved the plan yet, but ultimately it will be up to governors to give the green light for their states to begin the vaccination process. IBM security researchers say they have detected a cyber espionage effort using targeted phishing emails to try and collect vital information on the World Health Organization's initiative for distributing COVID-19 vaccines to developing countries. The researchers said they could not be sure who was actually behind the campaign. According to researchers, the precision, targeting, and careful efforts to leave no tracks bore, quote, the potential hallmarks of nation-state tradecraft. The phishing emails and malicious attachment that prompted recipients to enter credentials that could have been used to harvest sensitive information. Targets include the European Commission's Director General for Taxation and Customs Union, as well as petrochemical companies. Also, in other news, the number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits fell as the nation celebrated Thanksgiving last week. Jobless claims remain high, though, still at 712,000. This is the latest sign that the U.S. economy and job market remain under stress from intensified viral outbreaks. Thursday's report, again coming today, from the Department of Labor says that the initial claims for jobless aid dropped from 787,000 from the week before. Before the virus paralyzed the economy in March, the number of people applying for unemployment benefits each week amounted to nearly 200,000. Keep it right here on News On. There is still much more to come. Coming up, how will this election fraud lawsuits end? It's a question we've been asking you. And why hasn't the Department of Justice run an investigation into our election system yet? That's something weighing on many people's minds. We're going to ask our bipartisan panel to weigh in. We're also going to ask you to share your voice when it comes to that question. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And welcome back to News On. Since day one, President Donald Trump has been very adamant about pursuing these election lawsuits. He doesn't appear to be slowing down anytime soon. He says he's willing to appeal any lawsuit all the way up to the Supreme Court. But the claims this more about just not his own presidency. That's what he's saying. It's about basically preserving the integrity, if you will, of our entire election system. Joining us now to weigh in on this is Democratic strategist and chair of the Technology Working Group of the Women's Leadership Forum at the DNC, Sarah Norman, and chairman of the Committee to Defend the President, Ted Harvey. Good to have you both back here on News On. Pleasure to see your faces.
Hello.
Hi. So before we begin, I want to just, again, the president delivered a 46-minute speech yesterday. I just want to play a recent clip from his speech about those lawsuits. Let's take a listen.
Within days after the election, we witnessed an orchestrated effort to anoint a winner, even while many key states were still being counted. The constitutional process must be allowed to continue. We are going to defend the honesty of the vote by ensuring that every legal ballot is counted and that no illegal ballot is counted. This is not just about honoring the votes of 74 million Americans who voted for me. It's about ensuring that Americans can have faith in this election and in all future elections.
So, Ted, I want to start with you. I just want to get your overall reaction to that speech. Again, the president saying that this is probably the most important speech he's ever made, at least to date. Is that what this is really about, though? Is it about maintaining the integrity process of our elections, if you will, more so than actually making sure that he has a second term?
Well, I think it's both, certainly. You look at the discrepancies that are being proven in multiple states that the numbers would overcome the deficit that the president has. We've got to get to the bottom of that. For instance, in Wisconsin, where 60,000 absentee ballots were voted, where those people didn't request absentee ballots. How did that happen? What is the issue there, and how can we rectify that situation? In Pennsylvania had 10 times that amount, and you see the lawsuits going forward in Georgia. We've got to get to the bottom of all of these issues and see exactly what the outcome of the election is, regardless of who won. But certainly, as the chairman of the Committee to Defend the President, my goal is to make sure that the president won and continue another 4 years of the Trump agenda. And the American people deserve that. If we can't confirm what the votes actually were in these crucial states, then that's going to call into question elections for years and years to come.
Sarah, does it matter to you? I mean, should we try to, if this again is the president's goal, it's not just to make sure that he maintains a second term there, but it's also to maintain the integrity of our election process. Should people want that? I mean, isn't there people calling that into question? Wouldn't you want to kind of put them at ease there?
Yes, of course we want to trust our democratic process, but so far there is no legitimate evidence that we shouldn't. Trump has no legitimate case. There's no evidence of significant fraud here other than Trump's claims, frankly, and his attempt to overthrow an election that he legitimately lost will not work. Joe Biden will be president on January 20th, but though Trump's attempts to overthrow this election will not work, it doesn't mean there won't be consequences to this. This is damaging to the American people, to the Republican Party, and to our democracy. So let's talk about what Trump is doing here to try to overturn the results. First, he's fighting in the courts, which continue to strike him down because his claims are baseless. Second, he is trying to sway public opinion by spreading misinformation and is frankly taking advantage of his supporters' emotions. And finally, he's putting pressure on local election officials who are supposed to be nonpartisan to not certify the results which he lost. And he's pressuring state legislators to send electors to the Electoral College to go against the voice of the people. Now, this will not work to overthrow the election that he lost by 6 million votes,
But Sarah, let me ask you this, because we are short on time, and I want to make sure I ask you this question. I've heard this over and over again by not just Democrats, but as you mentioned, some Republicans as well, saying, where's the evidence, where's the evidence, where's the evidence? But the argument that I'm hearing, and Ted, I'd like you to chime in from people when it comes to the president's legal team, is that we're not even being allowed to present that evidence. So how can you say there isn't evidence? Would you like not to just see it, Sarah?
I would love to see evidence. So far, we have seen a lot of attempts at evidence that have not proven to be credible. I mean, I think that the judge from Pennsylvania said it well, that this is an attempt to overthrow 7 million votes with no claims, no credible claims. If there were credible claims, of course, I welcome democracy. I respect the country more than I respect any party. But so far, there has been no credible evidence, and I don't expect to see any. And what I hate is that at the end of this, we're setting up a precedence where if the president doesn't like the election results, he can just attack with baseless claims until either he gets his way or no one knows what to believe. And I really think that's
and I want Ted to weigh in on that. If I may,
sure.
I'd like to get Ted to weigh in on that so you have adequate time there. So again, we're hearing this over and over again from Democrats like Sarah saying that he's undermined the election process. This is unprecedented. It's actually creating more violence, more division in our country, and we haven't seen any credible evidence. Your reaction to that?
Well, I haven't seen any violence from the Republican side of the aisle. What we are seeing is the Democrats in mainstream media and the social media giants trying to do everything they can to censor any discussion of the true evidence that is out there. How does she explain the fact that 60,000 absentee ballots were voted without people actually requesting the absentee ballots? By law, they must request the absentee ballots. How do you explain the fact that you have over 100 people who have signed sworn affidavits in Pennsylvania specifically saying that votes were brought in post-dated after 8 o'clock on election night, which is against the law, and voted on and sent through the machines and voted? How do you explain the fact that not one single ballot was thrown out for signature verification in the entire city of Atlanta in Georgia? These are legitimate issues that the president certainly has a constitutional right to bring up and go before the court and have his day in court. It is not overthrowing an election. If anything, the mainstream media, the Democrats, and the social media is overthrowing an election by not allowing the court process to go forward, the constitutional process to go forward, and literally trying to negate the votes of 70 million people. They have a right to have their legal votes counted and throwing out those illegal votes so that we have a full understanding of who won this election. And I believe in the end, Trump will be the one sworn in on January 20th.
Sarah, your response to that?
Look, we would welcome any evidence if he was able to prove it. But so far, he has not been able to prove any of these claims to all the courts that he's been through, which
he hasn't
I believe
been to
about
a court
30
in Wisconsin.
cases have been shut down. And I'm sure that these cases are going to continue at least through December 14th. But so far, he has failed to prove
So let me
any of
ask you
these
that. So let me ask you this, because we only have a minute remaining. So real quickly, Ted, I want to go to you. Do you think any of these lawsuits are going to wind up at the Supreme Court?
Yes, I do. I believe that certainly the situation in Wisconsin where you have votes that were illegally voted, 60,000. The president's only behind by about 18,000 in Wisconsin. The votes in Pennsylvania, I believe the state legislature is going to intervene in there after all of the proof that was given in the legislative hearings. And the Georgia cases are going to go forward. This has got a long way to go.
All right. Sarah, last word to you, 15 seconds. Do you think it's going to happen?
I don't think this will go to the Supreme Court because all the other courts have struck it down and there doesn't seem to be any evidence. And in addition, the recounts we counted, we recounted, and we recounted again, and the results are still in Biden's favor. So I don't think this is worth it.
Well, we're going to have to see what transpires in the days and weeks ahead. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Sarah and Ted. Stick around here. Still a lot more to come. You're watching News On. RD. And welcome back to News On. Californians are fleeing as strong winds push fire through canyons there. Just a horrible situation. Powerful winds push flames through Southern California earlier today. An out-of-control wildfire just burning homes, forcing residents to flee. They cannot seem to catch a break. The blaze began late Wednesday last night as a house fire that quickly spread to tender dry bush as gusts topped 70 miles per hour. It grew in size throughout the night with plumes of smoke. They were just visible for a mile. You can see how thick it is right there on your screen. We now want to take a look at how the weather looks like around the rest of the country. Hopefully, California will see some rain very soon. Here's the very latest from Weather Nation's Patrick Crawford.
I'm Weather Nation meteorologist Kara James with a look at your top weather headlines, one of which is the severe weather threat for two parts of the southeast going into Friday with this next system coming in. Through the afternoon, parts of the western Florida panhandle from Pensacola to near Tallahassee have the chance for some thunderstorms that could have gusty winds or even a brief weak spin-up tornado. And then into the evening and overnight hours, that threat area will shift along the Grand Strand of South Carolina and include a lot of eastern North Carolina as well. While gusty straight line winds are the main threat with this system, there is the chance, especially especially in the afternoon for the western Florida panhandle for some brief weak spin-up tornadoes to form. There is just enough wind spin with height to have to worry about that as a threat, in addition to the threat for gusty straight-line winds in excess of 60 miles an hour. Tracking this system, it will be coming in from parts of the plains through the day today. Heavy rain will be ongoing across parts of Louisiana and Mississippi, but it's not until we get to the overnight hours into Friday that things really start to ramp up. There may be an early morning severe weather threat from Mobile towards around Pensacola. Heavy rain across parts of Alabama, central Tennessee, and Kentucky before this whole system shifts to the east and through the afternoon. There we get yet another chance for some strong to severe storms across the Florida panhandle as heavy rain and thunderstorms move into parts of northern Georgia and then as far east into the Carolinas. The next round of strong to severe storms will be, though, into the evening and overnight hours across eastern North Carolina and South Carolina. By around 2 a.m., this leading edge of rain and thunderstorms will be starting to push off the Outer Banks, which should start to ramp down our severe weather threat. But the heavy rain will continue, along with the potential for some wraparound snow into the mountains of North Carolina and parts of western Virginia, and then the system will track its way through the northeast. Another top weather headline, critical fire weather conditions today across Southern California.
Yeah, those unfortunately very dry Santa Ana winds that are offshore that are decreasing the humidity, increasing temperatures. Some gusts upwards of 55 to 65 miles an hour are going to be possible. San Diego County and north of Los Angeles to the San Gabriel Mountains under the greatest threat from these offshore winds today that are also going to be timed out with the low relative humidity in the afternoon. We've seen some gusts over 60 miles an hour already. Unfortunately, we are still looking at some stronger wind gusts throughout the day as well, getting up to around 15 to around 25 miles per hour potentially. High winds going to be kicking up potentially to 55 again and 60 miles per hour, and that's leading to the red flag warnings in these areas. Just outside of Bakersfield, down through the I-5, the Grapevine, all the way through Los Angeles County, Riverside, portions of San Bernardino, and into the San Diego County mountains. Unfortunately, we did have 2 wildfires spark overnight. One of those has grown very quickly in the Orange County area, and then the critical risk, unfortunately, is going to continue into Friday. So we have at least 2 days of those very intense fire conditions developing that could lead to those rapid spreads of wildfires. For more information, you can always head to our website, weathernationtv.com.
Now for a look at some international news. Congress passed a bill that would boot Chinese and other foreign companies from U.S. stock exchanges if they do not grant auditors access to examine their financial reports. It requires that the Securities and Exchange Commission block trading the stock from businesses that have dodged inspectors 3 years in a row. China opposes a bill as it is meant to be a part of a larger plan, if you will, to crack down on Chinese business ventures on Wall Street. Iranian officials have taken a major step to suspend UN inspections of the country's nuclear facilities. With more on that, we want to turn now to our partners at justthenews.com and Carrie Sheffield.
Hey there, Miranda. Yes, we want to let your viewers know about the latest development in Iran. So the government of Iran has voted in favor of suspending the UN inspections of the country's nuclear facilities. This effort is coming as Democrat Joe Biden is considering having the U.S. to rejoin the 2015 International Nuclear Accord with Iran. Observers are saying part of why Iran is doing this is because they feel desperate at this point. They have been forced to the table. They've been forced to the brink because of the sanctions that the Trump administration has brought to the table. The Trump administration has also been able to isolate Iran through bringing in other Arab states who are Sunni through the Abraham Accords and these historic peace deals that have basically put Iran on notice that they cannot be a risk to Israel. And so you have a lot of Arab states who are siding with Israel. In the past, they were not doing this at all. And so they're saying that Iran, by taking this action, is trying to signal that they want to have the clout that they had before Trump came to the table. But it's a whole different ballgame with the change in the dynamic of the Sunni states. Of course, we're going to keep you posted on all of this at justthenews.com. No matter what happens in January 20th, if we have a new administration or if it continues the Trump administration, Iran will continue to be a central piece in U.S. foreign policy. Back to you.
And thank you, Carrie. And be sure and check out her show, Just the News. It begins 9 o'clock Eastern time right here on Real America's Voice. In other news, we want to talk about, it was getting a lot of attention. It's the Staten Island bar. It's just received local support, tremendous amount, for rejecting New York's COVID-19 restrictions after Staten Island's bar Max Tavern was fined thousands of dollars for being open well past New York's 10 o'clock curfew. In fact, 60 protesters gathered outside to show support for the owners.
USA! USA! USA!
And the display of support was also for the co-owner of that bar, Danny Presti, who was arrested Tuesday night for not complying with COVID restrictions and refusing to close down his business. There is still much more to come here on News On. We're going to be hearing from you, again, the most important voice of the day. We have a new question that we're asking you. A lot of people are wondering here. We've been focusing a lot on the Trump campaign's legal lawsuits, but a lot of people questioning why. And we don't know officially because they don't always release this, but we want to know why the Attorney General hasn't investigated these allegations of fraud. That is a question that we are asking you today. We're going to share some of your answers and also let you know how you can weigh into this. In other news, the pandemic could not dampen last night's bright display of holiday tradition in New York. Despite all that, take a look. The 50,000 lights on the Rockefeller Center tree were officially turned on for the first time, love seeing this, signaling a switch to the Christmas season. The usual thousands who gathered to see the colorful sights, well, they were not attendance this year. Because of COVID-19, the Rockefeller Plaza was closed down to the public. Still a beautiful sight to see nonetheless. And several stars performed before the big display. Love that. So pretty. Starting today, the 75-foot Norway spruce will be up, all lit up from morning until midnight every day through the new year. Anyone hoping to see it, well, you're going to have to grab a ticket. Kind of limiting that as can be. And later, we're going to have some holiday lights to share with you from this week that you don't want to miss. So much coming up here in this edition. Again, let's go ahead and show that question again if you'd like to go in and weigh in on this. This is a question that we're asking you of the day, if we can post that up. We're asking you, the president, again, delivering that 46-minute speech, one in which he says it's probably the most important speech he's ever delivered to date. These, of course, focus on allegations of fraud. That's leaving many to wonder why, and we don't know because the Department of Justice doesn't always announce its investigations, but nonetheless, it's leaving many to wonder whether or not the Department of Justice will, in fact, launch an investigation into these fraud claims, if you will, when it comes to the elections. So you can weigh in on that. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. We are on Parlay. We are on CloudHub. Twitter, did I name them all? LinkedIn, I think so. So we'd love to hear from you because after all, your voice is the most important that we air here on this program. We will be right back with much more to come. You're watching News On, including our very own Heather Mullins is going to give us a live update on the situation in Georgia. What's going on there? The details coming up. And welcome back to News On. I'm Miranda Khan. Real America's Voice correspondent Heather Mullins joining us live from Georgia, where attorney Sidney Powell's case was recently expedited. Some new developments there. Heather, thanks so much for joining us. Always a pleasure. What's going on? What can you tell us?
So today, there's actually the Georgia Senate Oversight Committee is actually doing what they refer to as a fact-finding mission. So they have brought in people from the election officials here in Georgia. There's also witnesses here that have submitted affidavits of alleged voter fraud or security breaches, that sort of thing. First person that spoke this morning was the attorney Ryan Garner, I believe, and he was basically saying that everything the state has done thus far has been by the law, that they have 250 investigations that are open, being split between 23 investigators. Also on the ballot for this morning's topic was Fulton County. We heard that they were asked to send somebody from the board to speak at 11. Nobody showed up, and it was about quarter after 11 that we got word that Rick Barron, the election director, could not make it. Someone was here from the office to apologize on his behalf, saying that the deadline for the rescan was last night at midnight, and he had to do some reconciliation that he got tied up with this morning. There were a few senators that expressed disappointment that they couldn't ask him questions, because this is the big county where a lot of people are expected to testify later this afternoon of fraud, observers being obstructed, warehouses full of ballots that had no security. So there's a lot circulating around Fulton County, and having someone here to speak on their behalf was pretty important to them. But who was here from Fulton County was the chair of the commissioners. So the Board of Commissioners had their chair here, who he actually said he would give Fulton County an A+ for how they handled the election. I found that interesting as we move into this afternoon, and we're expected to hear from several people from Fulton County that say that's just not the case.
Okay, I want to go back because there's a lot of information to kind of go over there. So let's go back to Sidney Powell there, because as you know, Trump campaign's legal team tried to, a couple weeks ago, distance itself, if you will, from Sidney Powell, saying, you know, she's not necessarily a part of the legal team. So is what she doing, is that separate from the Trump campaign?
Well, I mean, that's the official statement from the Trump campaign, is that Sidney Powell is not a part of their legal team. So anything she files, she's essentially doing so on her own free will. But, you know, she was here yesterday in Wills Park, Alpharetta, Georgia, along with Lynn Wood and Democrat Rep. Vernon Jones, all of them speaking out in favor, saying that they have, or in favor of the president, saying that they have piles of evidence that he won the state of Georgia and the election by a landslide, and that they have what they need to prove it. That it will be yet to be seen. I mean, we're going to see this as it unfolds, as the judges rule on these lawsuits. Today, they are expected to speak. Rudy Giuliani is also here as well, so I'm not sure which one of them are going to speak on behalf of the campaign, but they are reported to.
So what is the ultimate goal of today's gathering and listening to testimony, if you will?
So today's gathering was put on by the state legislature here in Georgia, and it's basically, like I said, a fact-finding mission is what they called it, because they want to hear firsthand accounts of what happened in this election so that they can potentially write new laws to strengthen the process. There are also several senators here that are in support of a general session so that we can make sure that some laws are changed before the January 5th runoffs.
Right. So this doesn't necessarily, this wouldn't impact, if you will, the election results from the presidential election, but more or less this is being done to make sure that things are intact when it comes to those ever so important January runoffs. Is that correct, the way I'm understanding it?
Yeah, that's correct. This is just an exploratory sort of session that they put together to ask questions to elected officials and to hear from people who have submit affidavits alleging things within the state of Georgia.
All right, Heather Mullins joining us live in Georgia, again, following the very latest that's going on there. Be sure and look forward to updates throughout the day from Heather Mullins right here on Real America's Voice. And you can find her on Twitter at TalkMullins. Thank you so much for that live report. Still to come here on News On. Again, we're going to be talking about the most important voice of the day. We're asking you to weigh in on all these legal suits that the Trump campaign is filing. We're going to have a look at what some of you have to say when we share your voice. Next. And welcome back to News On. It's time to share your voice. Let's jump right into it with our question of the day. And here it is. President Trump delivers a 46-minute address alleging a rigged election. Should the Department of Justice investigate claims of election fraud? And would it help restore voter confidence regardless of what it uncovers? All right, our first response is from Inigo Lend on Facebook saying this. They absolutely should, regardless of who wins. Any fraud uncovered should be charged to the fullest extent. People should fear messing with an election. Well said. Thank you very much. Now we want to go to John Glazer on Facebook, who said this. Where were all these people before? Why didn't they think about this months before the election? Why? Because there was no fraud. They checked the Georgia vote in Dominion. The Dominion was the same as the hand count, and many Republicans that were on Trump's team have agreed with this. You perpetuate the lie and falsehood. Why didn't the count for senators change? If they really wanted to steal it, the Democrats would have gotten rid of McConnell and Graham. Two thorns. Can you answer any of these questions? Also, why did a Republican appointed judge throw out the legal challenges in Pennsylvania? All good points. We're not trying to, and I'm not sure if you're referring to us, but we're not trying to perpetuate any lies. We're actually just trying to pose a question and to get you to weigh in and share your thoughts. If you have a question that you think our viewers, or you'd like to have our viewers weigh in on, by all means, we'd love to hear it. Doesn't matter, again, what side of the aisle you consider yourself on, whether that's right or left or anywhere in between. We want to hear from you. As after all, that's what we're all about, and that's what makes this country so beautiful. Next, we have Jeffrey Durr on Instagram saying this. I have heard that retired General McInerney has advised, the president to order limited martial law, send the National Guard in to confiscate the Dominion machines. What the Democrats are doing is an attempt at a coup. Support the general's recommendation. People are mostly unaware of the deceit going on. It is criminal and must be brought out in the open and to justice. Tons of evidence that the general public is totally unaware of. This is a national emergency, he says. Jeffrey Durr, thank you very much. And lastly, we have DS Smart 31 on Instagram chiming in saying this. Any pencil-whipped investigation by the DOJ yielding the same results won't restore voter confidence. The American people have seen for themselves what happened in the election. We aren't fools. Installing an illegitimate government against our will and trampling the integrity of our electoral process will destroy our republic, and we won't get it back. Thank you very much for weighing in. And thank all of you for sharing your voice here today on Real America's Voice. If you haven't responded yet to this question, there is still time. As I mentioned, we are all over social media, so pick a flavor. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Parlay, CloudHub, you name it, you'll find us. Also, we always want to remind all of you that we have our very own social media platform, which you can find on our website at americasvoice.news. And you know what? If you're on the go like most of us are, don't forget to be sure and download our app. Again, here is the question of the day. We're asking you whether or not you think the DOJ should investigate those claims of fraud, and would it make a difference? Weigh in. We'll be right back. So if you're looking for a job right now, we may have one that's right for you. You know, can you handle requests, coordinate meetings and appointments in a fast-paced environment? Well, guess what? You may be in luck because Queen Elizabeth is hiring for a new personal assistant, if you will. If you haven't already seen it, the job posting, it's actually up, believe it or not, on LinkedIn. Check it out. It states that Buckingham Palace is hiring for a personal assistant. The position will be part of a team within the private secretary's office. The royal family is looking to fill that position by January, so get going on it if you're interested. It's a contract position that ends January 2023. As of yesterday morning, the listing has a little over 200 applicants, as seen on LinkedIn. Who knows if they have it posted elsewhere, like Monster or something. All right. Mandel Street in Sacramento is just decked out with decorations, but one house has a very special decoration aimed to please every wishful boy and girl this Christmas. So a Sacramento man set up a Santa mailbox. I love this, to bring holiday cheer. Look at that. You can see it's already doing that. It is meant for kids to put their letters in the mailbox so Santa can, of course, respond to them. 20 kids, as of right now, have dropped off their letters so far. The man said it's meant, you know, to provide something for the community, of course, during this imaginably so stressful holiday season. Those who have dropped off their letters with wish lists are eager, I'm sure, to hear from St. Nick. The man who set it up says that Santa will write back, again, if you leave a self-addressed envelope, of course. While the pandemic is certainly making its presence felt this holiday season, giving children this option of being able to, you know, get in touch with Santa is, you know, that's kind of what the holiday spirit is about, right? It's not all doom and gloom out there. So there's something to cheer you up, hopefully. This maybe not. So in case you're wondering, the word of the year. Any guesses? Anyone? Anyone? What? My director's not even going to try to guess? He probably cheated. Pandemic is the word. See? He's in my ear right now, and he totally cheated. All right, that's basically been the case all around the world since the coronavirus hit. Pretty easy guess, though, I would say. But dictionary.com just made it official in the books now. It announced pandemic as the 2020 word of the year. This happened actually on Monday. It comes, of course, after months of coronavirus infections, hospitalizations, and whatnot because of this, of course, pandemic. Surely by now you know what the word pandemic means, but just in case, dictionary.com's official definition is, quote, a disease prevalent throughout an entire country, continent, or the whole world. So there you have it. COVID-19's unprecedented impact on the globe made pandemic the obvious choice for first place. It also gave rise to new phrases related to the virus impact, like pandemic economy, pandemic schooling, and pandemic dating even. All right. Lastly, we have a kind of a, you know, funny story here. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is evidently, well, she's not a fan, apparently, when being called AOC. Suddenly, she stated on Twitter, quote, AOC is a name given to me by community and the people. Y'all can call me AOC. And she continued, quote, government colleagues referring to each other in a public or professional context, aka who don't know me like that, should refer to their peers as Congresswoman, Representative, etc. Basic respect 101. Okay, well, what do you think? What do you think about that? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We don't have that question posted, but you can go ahead and answer it if you'd like. Refer to it. You can find me at Real Miranda Con. Again, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Parlay, CloutHub, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Eventually, I'm just going to be able to ramble these off like there's no tomorrow. But anyway, find us there and let us know what you think. Is that a sign of disrespect when her peers call her AOC? That will do it for this edition of News On. Again, our very own Heather Mullins monitoring the situation on the ground in Georgia. As she mentioned, Rudy Giuliani expected to speak. Several people giving testimony there when it comes to this alleged voter fraud. Keep it right here on Real America's Voice for the very latest on that story. Also, coming up next, America's Voice Live. We'll see you here tomorrow at noon.